Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike McClure. I'm with AdArt Sign Company. And I don't know if David talked about how this came about. Did you fill?
Not to this group in some blog posts, but why don't you tell us? It's a
Well,
great story.
first of all, David and I met, gosh, it was probably 2013, 2014, somewhere in there. At first he said, well, I don't think we're customers for each other. And I said, well, meet with me anyway. Maybe we can help each other. And we met, and actually we become business friends, even though we probably only see each other about once a year. But so last year we had our regular meeting, and David invited Chuck Dietz, his architect friend, to come, and we sat down and we just basically sat on this couch and talked for about an hour, hour and a half, just about what we'd been through the 2-3 previous days here at ReCon, and talked about the future of the industry and where we've seen things going, and just had a really great conversation. And then David had this brilliant idea to why not spread the love and invite other people to talk, and so that's kind of how this came about. And I appreciate you putting this together. You've done a tremendous job, and I've been thinking, we kind of signed on to this thing a few weeks ago, and I've been thinking since then, well, what do I want to talk about? And I'm not even sure I want to talk about signs, although if you have questions, I'll be happy to answer those. And I need to do.
What's the biggest sign you ever put up?
Pardon me?
What's the biggest sign you ever put up?
Personally, because I started in this business as an apprentice sign installer, 120-foot tall McDonald's sign. So that's the biggest one I put up. There's bigger ones here on the strip, and our company has done some of those over the years. But that, personally, I know you get up on the top of a 120-foot McDonald's sign. That's about tall enough. So it's a little spooky up there. So I was really trying to figure out what to talk about, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not sure you want to talk about signs, so I thought I would tell you a story. And this is a story about a man who had a job, and he got an idea of how to sell something, sell a specific product. He was selling one product to people, and he became successful. He started out just selling directly to them, and he thought maybe there's a better way, so he expanded his product line, started selling more. And he found a way for a unique way for people to order the product, and then he would have it delivered to them. And his company grew and really became a model of retail for that that span of products. Now, who do you think that was? Anybody?
Jeff Bezos?
Richard Sears. 1886, he started selling watches. And it was very successful. He figured out a way to sell it mail order. People would place their order. He would fulfill the order. First, I was doing the research for this. I read a line where one woman said, "Stop sending me sewing machines. You send me 5 sewing machines already." So they had their issues with their product distribution. But as they grew and opened more fulfillment centers, they realized that they were selling to the rural population, but they weren't selling to the city population. So they started opening stores, brick and mortar stores, to sell to the city population. And really the point I'm trying to make here is that the Amazon business model is nothing new. I mean, I can remember as a kid growing up, the biggest excitement was when the Sears and Roebuck catalog showed up, and you have to look through there, and particularly, about October or September, October, when the Christmas catalog come up, had all the toys in it. That was amazing. And I grew up on a farm in southwest Missouri, so in a rural area, and we ordered a lot of things from Sears. And usually you'd place your order. Back then it was by mail, or because I'm really dating myself, we didn't even have phones where I grew up until I was in the 6th grade, so really rural. But you would put the order in, the mailman would pick it up, and then about a week later you could go into the Sears store in the local town, which was for us 25 miles away, and pick up your order. Now, they had that model. What happened? Why aren't they the dominant player today? Why are they? Whenever you brought up Sears a while ago, you kind of scared me because you're like, well, there goes my story. I think it's because they didn't adapt. I mean, they had the idea. I guess they got complacent, but they didn't adapt. And I think that's what's happening, what has to happen in retail, in any business. You have to adapt with what's going on today. And if you don't adapt, and one of the speakers talked about earlier, Craig, when he's talking about technology, is you have to adapt and adapt quickly. Knowledge is power. I think his words were, knowledge is power, but speed kills. And So if you want to kill it, you got to be quick. So I just kind of want to talk about a few things about adaption and about where we're at today in retail, and then maybe tie it into a little bit about what I do. I think originally, traditional retail, I guess you could refer to it as retail 1.0. It was the same model we'd used since the camel trading caravan days of long ago. I have a product, you have a need, you buy my product. And actually, commerce like that is what drove society, what drove civilization, because we all weren't really good hunter-gatherers, or we weren't good hunters, but maybe I was good at making fish hooks, and so I could make your fish hook and you could give me fish for my fish hooks. And it grew into commerce, it grew into retail, it grew into the economy as we know it today, and civilization as we know it today. And then probably about 30 years ago, maybe a little longer, I think retail sales 2.0 came on, and that was information. All of a sudden we have all this information that we're able to gather. Society becomes a little more compacted with phone, television. So we entered 2.0 age, where we have all this information, and even today, if we go to a brick and mortar store, most of us will go online and research the product, or find out if it's a major purchase, find out a little bit about it, who's got the best deal. I go on and see, check the weekly ads from the different stores to see who might have the best deal on what I want to buy. So that's, the information age really helped tremendously, both as retailers and as consumers. We enable us to make smarter, more informed decisions. Usually if we go buy a car, we know just about as much about the car as the man on the lot. So we use that research. But I think today we're entering into what I would call 3.0. And that's the age of machine learning, cognitive computing, artificial intelligence, virtual reality. And I think that's going to be the future of retail, probably for the rest of my lifetime, that we can see. And again, it's going to be who can adapt that technology to what they're doing and make it work and satisfy the consumer need. And another thing I've been doing is, everybody I meet with over the last 2 or 3 days, I've been asking them specific questions. Where do you see retail going? And I've talked to everybody from, people in my generation, the baby boom generation, to the millennials. And I was talking to a millennial the other night, and he said, we just don't need that many clothes. And I think they are looking to be more minimal. They're living in smaller homes or smaller apartments, sometimes not by choice, but they just don't seem to need to have as much stuff as my generation. And
Why do you think that is?
I think it's where they're at. Personally, I mean, I may be wrong, but I know when I was that age, when I was the age group we categorize millennials in today, I couldn't afford that much stuff. Although, you have Visa, MasterCard found a way to make me afford it, got me in big trouble. And I think maybe they're smarter than what we were. They realize that if I can't afford it, I don't need it. I'll just wait till I can afford it, and then I'll get it if I still want it. So I think that's part of the reason why they're scaling back on purchases. They're only acquiring things they really need and use. There's a whole industry out there based on a place to put all our stuff, because we just have too much of it.
So along the lines of that, there's in Inland Empire in California, I think either clutter or make space just lease like over 100,000 square feet. They're on-demand self-storage, so they actually come to your house, give you a box, you put your stuff, they pick it up, and you look online and say, oh, I need this item, and walk it off. So it's crazy.
Yep. 1-800-GOT-JUNK. You point at it and it disappears. So, and they recycle. They don't just throw stuff away; they recycle it. And that was another thing that this millennial and I were talking about. It was that we don't repair things anymore. It's not feasible. It's cheaper to buy a new one than to repair the old one. And it's partly because maybe we made the old one so crappy that it wasn't worth repairing. But maybe we should look at at quality. I mean, some of the retailers that are still doing fairly well are like Nordstrom's, people that sell higher end goods that maybe are worth repairing. So. But to kind of tie that back to what we do, I try to take in all this information. I ask people a lot of questions that have absolutely nothing to do with what I do, just so I can understand better how to help them, how I can incorporate my product into better serving the retailer. And I see things in the future. We do a lot of digital signage, so there's digital signage out there. I was at the DSE show here in Vegas a few weeks ago, and they have mirrors where you can walk in, and there's actually digital signage where you can order a certain, or you push a button and it shows you a certain outfit on your body in the signage. Now, I know there's some places already have deployed these, but it's still in the formative stages. But there's going to be virtual reality where you can just see yourself wearing a product or using a product. It's also a good tool. What we do is a good tool for customer engagement. And I also tell people, as far as the identification signage outside the building, you can't engage a customer that can't find you. So I think that's an important aspect as well. But I don't know. I think the key for everyone, whether we're in retail or brokers or developers or service the industry, we have to adapt. The only constant in life is change. The only thing that doesn't change is the fact that it changes. So, and if we're reluctant to adapt and adopt change, then we're just going to be left behind and wondering what happens. So,
Can I ask you a question going back to
Absolutely.
digital signs? What clients do you have that use digital signs, and what is their success? What do they use it for, and what kind of response?
Well, probably our major client that uses digital signage, and they use an awful lot, and it's banking. One of our bank customers utilizes digital signs in all their branches. When you go, they actually don't have tellers, they have banking representatives, and you sit down at their desk, and they've got a small display right there on their desk that has their name, and they just utilize it for promotion, for marketing, and it's very successful. The digital signage program they had in place was starting to get a little dated. We're actually upgrading all the digital signage in all their branches, and it's been a very nice program for us.
So it's kind of like going to a bed and breakfast or something where they're showing the different pictures
Yeah.
of different services
Yeah.
they have.
And for
Have you ever done any big outdoor digital signs?
Yeah, that's really our main focus is large outdoor digital displays. So.
And who is that client, and what is their success?
Well, there's multiple ones. I just did a shopping center in San Jose for Hunter Storm, that Bass Pro Anchor Center. It's got a large electronic message center on the freeway pylon. So,
Have you done any cities?
yes, I'm doing one for actually one of the other speakers was from San Ramon. I'm actually doing a digital sign for the city of San Ramon right now. So, I did one for the town of Moraga, which is, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of St. Mary's College, but that's where they're located in Moraga, California. So.
Are they basically big LED televisions, or is that what it is? Or
Yes,
technically,
I mean
is
technically, and more so today, because 3 years ago, the most common display we used for outdoor for a shopping center probably would have been a 20 millimeter display. Just give you a quick overview of what that means. For digital signage, particularly for LED signage, it's measured by millimeter, and so contrary to what you might think logically with math, the smaller the number, the higher the resolution. So it basically means 20 millimeter means there's 20 millimeter space between the center of one pixel to the center of the next. And as the number gets smaller, you get more pixels compressed into a space, you get a higher resolution image. So today, most of our outdoor displays are 16 millimeter, and even we're going down to a lot of 10 millimeter. And when you get 16 and 10, you're getting close to the resolution of a TV screen. And we're even, some of the First Republic banks were doing 2 millimeter. And that's literally an LED television on the wall. So.
Now, do you operate them for them as well, or do they have them hooked up on the premises to be operated?
Most we use a software program, and usually it's a SaaS program. So we have server farms here in our Las Vegas office, or we can do on premise, depending on the need. But for the most part, if I was operating a digital sign back in San Francisco, if I have the proper credentials, I could open up my laptop, log in, make a change, send it, and then it would make that change immediately in San Francisco. So, and same thing, I could do the same thing in New York, or I could be on a beach in Hawaii and change my sign from, as long as you have internet access. So.
You've seen like office, Class A office space in New York City where they basically have a giant wall of video behind, so every time you walk into your building, it's a different lobby because there's something else on display.
It's like art changing art.
How long does one of these outdoor installations typically last? What's the life expectancy?
That's a good question, because for most, again, these are comprised of LED pixels. Most LED pixels have a lifetime of about 70,000 to 100,000 hours. And that only means that they don't die at the end of that time. That means after that period of time, after about 100,000 hours of operation, there's a noticeable dimness. But what usually happens is that the display becomes obsolete before it becomes dim, and because we're upgrading displays that we installed 5-10 years ago now with higher resolution, better quality, and it's just we want the latest technology, most of us. So.
What about weather? Do you have to have certain ones for certain climates, like the cold or the hot?
Well, not so much. It's the ones we use outdoors or have special components, or they're they're made of such. The potting is different, so they're water resistant. If it's extreme heat conditions, most of the time we can just use ventilation, but there are some large displays that use air conditioning to keep the components cool. So. Any other questions?
What are some of the use cases around the signs? Because are there more like, what's a use case of like a sign of the ones that you're putting up, the ones that you were speaking about like a minute ago, right? Where they have 100,000 hours, lifetimes. What are people using those signs for? Are they displays like what you were mentioning in the building, or are they exterior?
Well,
I'm not too familiar, so.
Well, each application would have its own unique use. So, for instance, what David was talking about, a video wall inside of an office building, depending on who the tenants are, you could display tenant information. You can actually take and segment the displays, and you could put CNN on one corner, maybe have a crawl across the bottom that has today's weather or today's stock market report. Depending on the audience, you can tailor the display to fit that audience, and then you can, with the software, you can day part it. So if you have a different type of clientele in the morning as to the evening, you can offer different messages, and you can target the message to the specific audience. And the day is coming, and it's not too far off, and it's sometimes a little Orwellian, but you can actually, through near field communication, which you can actually activate or deactivate on your cell phone, a sign can detect who you are, what recent purchases you make, and display an ad for something that it thinks you might be interested in. It's cool, but it's also a little creepy. But it is. It's the technology, and it's coming. It's already here, but it's not deployed in not everybody's using it. But I would say in 5-10 years, you're going to see that everywhere.
What about security? Because I'm pretty techy myself. I can imagine if I walked into the building and I saw the video wall, I would hack the living hell out of that thing and put pictures of my co-founders yawning or eating,
well,
have a display for everybody, and then just go, oh, I have no idea what happened there.
There was actually an incident.
So many people.
Yeah, it is an issue. They do have most of them are password protected, but again, you know, there's people that have knowledge, they can get into just about anything. So there was an instance recently in, I think it was in Grand Central Station, where a video wall there started displaying porn, and it ran for 3 minutes before they were able to shut it down.
3 minutes, that's
Yeah.
it?
Dude, there's children.
That's quick.
Well,
That's quick.
it wasn't quick enough for the people that were there.
Well, yeah.
Trust me. And I just read about it in. I subscribed to some of the technology e-zines, and I just read about it there. But it is an issue, and the software we use is password protected, and it's also set up where if you don't have the proper credentials, you can't make changes. Most of the changes that are made have to be approved by an administrator. So if you're not an administrator, you could hack in, type in a change or put something in, but it wouldn't necessarily go to the
Right.
screen
Go
because
live, yeah.
somebody has to approve that change. So there's a series of checks and balances built into the software. Not only that, it tells you who logged in, when they logged in, and then who approved it. So it tracks all of that stuff. So.
And who the hacker was, no. It's fascinating.
Anybody else have any questions?
Sign business has come a long way.
It had, well, when I started in this business, we had message centers, but they were bulbs. So your pixel matrix was based on how big your bulb was.
Right.
So to get higher resolution, we started over the years using smaller and smaller bulbs. So when I first started, we were using A19 bulbs, which is basically your household incandescent bulb. And that's probably a pixel matrix of about 3 inches. And then we started using smaller bulbs like 11S14s, which is a little bit smaller, and going down to eventually we use wedge-based bulbs, which you can actually put graphics on there instead of just, before it was just text, you could just put text on there. So I'm really dating myself here, but, and then everything we did, any letters we used back then, like channel letters for tenant signage, was neon. I still love neon, but we hardly ever use neon anymore. It's all gone to LED. So
Yeah, exactly.
it's making a bit of a comeback, but it quite literally is a dying art because a lot of the people that know how to do that are old and they're just passing on. But there's younger people, and neon it takes about 6 months to learn how to bend to,
do it, yeah.
but it takes a lifetime to master it. So it's not a.
Yeah, we had a shopping center in New Jersey, and it had a neon detail that went along the whole facade, and it worked for about 3 months, and then it stopped working, and it was just like it looked great while it worked, but
Well, neon requires a lot of maintenance, and we're actually using a lot of LED and embedded tube to replace border neon, and we have a great product that actually can replicate because there's a few applications where we can't use neon anymore, or where we can't use anything but neon, like an open pan channel letter. But I have a product that we use now that's replicates that really nice. It's the best I've seen, and I've seen several going back about 15 years that they've tried to develop that. But,
What about solar? Are you doing anything with solar? In other words, where it's not electricity, so the sign can be powered, maybe by some other means?
It's real expensive, and the thing is, most of the time you need your sign to be on at night when there's no sun. So you have to heavily invest in some sort of battery storage system. The only time it really makes sense economically would be if your sign is located so far away from any power source that you actually have to get the local utility to run power out there to it, or trench and run conduit a mile or so. Then it might make sense, but for the most part, it's still pretty cost prohibitive. So.
Well, thank you, Mike. That was fantastic.
All right.
Great. And also, thanks for being the inspiration for this. I think a lot of people have gotten a lot out of today, and it probably wouldn't happen if you and Chuck and Brian over there hadn't come up with this, help come up with this idea.
Really enjoyed it. Thanks for
Great.
putting it on.
Thanks again.
We'll look for the Speaker Series 2 next year.
Absolutely.
Get smart too.
Yeah.
Hey, you guys, are you getting ready to